You know, don't you think it's comical that these anti-ICE protesters, these, I guess these neighborhood watch command units that are roaming the neighborhoods of Minnesota, checking to see who is entering those neighborhoods, making sure those people that are driving through the parts of their city actually belong and live there? Isn't it ironic that these very people are out there protecting illegal immigrants who have crossed a border without showing their ID, entering a country where they don't belong, where they don't live, and to which they have no claim? I mean, scenes like this are taking place across America. It's just a funny observation I wanted to share with you. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Happy Thursday, folks. We've got this. The weekend dead ahead. Just one more day. And almost a challenge to see all the things that could possibly happen. So we'll go through that here in just a minute. By the way, Scott Bessent is back on the Hill. I'll take you through. He yesterday was the House of Representatives where he absolutely turned Maxine Waters and other Democrat members of Congress who dared to try to take a bite out of him. The Treasury Secretary today in the Senate, where the usual cast of characters had their turn. With Scott, did not go particularly well for them. So, I don't know, but they actually tried to ask him about the illegal immigration thing. They asked him about Alex Preddy. They got into this with him. They said, well, wait, does Alex Preddy deserve to die? And this on top of the insanity I saw on CNN. Bakari Sellers on CNN, on Abby Phillip. Bakari Sellers, who himself is an attorney. Now, I know he's an avowed leftist. I know he's basically operating with half of his brain up his butt. But I'm telling you, Bakari Sellers actually making the case that he would give advice to his client that it was permissible to interfere with law enforcement as they're making arrests if law enforcement is engaged in the unlawful and unconstitutional activity of apprehending illegal immigrants. This is insane. And I thought about this, and I think, look, even if you're ideologically opposed to ICE going up and picking up illegals, or, by the way, the cops doing anything. If you've got law enforcement, you've got a law enforcement officer with a gun, with a badge, and they're out there engaged, they're in the course and scope of their employment, they have legal privileges that you as a non-sworn officer don't have. And in that confrontation, if you get involved and you tangle with them, and this is me telling you as a lawyer, bad things will happen, and the presumption that you were wrong and they were right will always exist after the fact. It is extremely difficult, and I speak to this as an attorney who has represented the families in wrongful death cases against some there are some bad cops, not very many, but there are some bad cops, and I've had those cases. And they're very difficult cases to win. The presumption goes to the cop. And it's, I don't care. I've given you the examples. I've talked to you. I had a client who had, I'll never forget this, he was carrying a Happy Meal. A Happy Meal does not look like a gun at all. But ultimately, the officer was never charged. And the reason for it is just to add it was just fog of war. And there was a armed robbery going on across the street. And the cop thought that my client was a perp. I mean, it happens. So this idea, and you see it everywhere. They are so hung up on, and to a lesser extent, of course, Renee Good, now that the videos, came out very quickly showing her hitting the cop before the, shots were fired. But this Alex Preddy thing is not, they will forever talk about Alex Preddy. And in turn, I'm convinced of it, that these people, from the safety of their television studios, from their gubernatorial mansions, from their from the halls of Congress are telling ordinary Americans that they're in the right to go and interfere with ICE. They're in the right to interject themselves in the midst of law enforcement operations. And they're putting these people in danger of getting shot, of getting run over, of getting harmed. And you have to ask yourselves, why? Why are they doing it? Why would somebody from the comfort of their own tell a person to go out there and risk their lives? And the answer is they want the confrontations. They want the people out there to be put in harm's way. It's really sick when you step back and realize what it's all about. Somewhere, someplace, right now, as you hear my voice, there are Democrats at the highest levels of the party saying out loud, isn't it? It's just too bad that it's been a few weeks since the last shooting. I shouldn't say it, but been a couple weeks since Alex. We need more of this to bring the political heat to Trump. And this is, folks, I know some of these people, and I know them like the back of my hand. And I'm telling you, they are 100% out there, actually bummed that there isn't more carnage on the street. That they're bummed that Tom Homan is put some discipline in the ranks, but they're still going out there. They're still, kicking ass and taking names. They just arrested the Mr. Antifa guy. Did you see this? Did an early morning raid on him, pulled him out. He had a big Antifa shirt on. Of course, we were told by the media and the Democrats for many years, no such thing as the Antifa. It is a bugaboo construct of the Republican Party. So this guy gets arrested, gets hauled out. This is a guy who's organized a lot of illegal stuff, and had people outside were beside themselves, and again did what they could to interfere in that legitimate operation. There is a place to dispute the legitimacy of what police are doing, and I believe in that. You go to court, you challenge the warrant, you challenge the arrest, you challenge the charges, then you defend yourself at trial. Maybe you'll win. In a place like Minnesota, there are people who will practice jury nullification. The jurors will come forward if they're so inclined and avowed leftists and Trump haters and hate ICE. They'll let these protesters off the hook. As a lawyer, would I ever recommend to my client that he or she goes and thrusts themselves in the middle of an arrest taking place? No, you can't do that, officer. You can't. What are you doing? What are you doing? No. It's illegal, number one, and number two, it is a clear way of getting yourself hurt. My gosh. Well, I had to get that out of the way. All right, let's take a quick early break here. I want to get to the top five when we come back because there's a lot going on. There's important stuff that you need to know about. Some of it's pretty fun. Like, imagine California, by default, getting a Republican governor. Can you imagine that? Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. I am Nevada's Sam Mirejovsky. Sam Mirejovsky on the What's Right Media Network. This hour of the program brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. Welcome to the What's Right Show. My email, sam@whatsrightshow.com. Be sure to email me questions, comments, concerns. Now, as a former Californian. Let me tell you this story in our top 5. Number 5, a most wild thing could happen in California in the upcoming governor election. It's possible that California could end up with not one, but 2 Republicans running in the general election against each other. Well, that's because California has something called a jungle primary. It's a free-for-all, open primary where the top 2 candidates, regardless of party affiliation, go to the general election. So there are 8 Dems running and 2 Republicans running. And the 8 Democrats are splitting the vote. Okay, but the 2 Republicans, it's possible the 2 Republicans, Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco, could end up in first and second place. And then no matter how it turns out, California would have a Republican governor. Wild thing, food for thought. Mentioned this before. There's an activist in Minnesota, Kyle Wagner, Mr. Antifa, called the federal officers Gestapo and murderers, posted a video that he later deleted, threatening ICE, said, "We are effing coming for you." Okay. Encouraged followers to harass immigration officers, saying we should cripple them. Anywhere we have an opportunity to get our hands on them, we need to put our hands on them. I mean, here it's agitation, it's threats against law enforcement. So this just now has landed him in some trouble. He's been arrested. I mentioned that raid early this morning in Minnesota. Number 3 news story, top 5 things going on today. The Children's Minnesota Hospital has halted puberty blockers for minors. This is great news. They are joining at least 21 hospitals or health systems who have ended or restricted care, gender-affirming care, right, for minors. Now, this is in part due to Trump's federal executive actions, subpoenas, threats to withhold Medicare, Medicaid, and recent lawsuits. So, so this the other centers that just in the last couple of weeks have ended this Ratty Children's Health Center in San Diego, and then the Children's Wisconsin and UW Health System in January stopped all gender-affirming care treatments for minors. Great news for the kids. Number 2 news story. This is absolute pure comedy gold. Kamala Harris, remember her? Well, her Kamala HQ, which was her campaign, social media account, became headquarters. It's just headquarters. And it's a relaunch. And I guess the intention is to become a place for organizing and for the next generation of campaigning. It's so bad. It's so bad, and it's so cringe. But here's in her own words. This is the announcement. This is the announcement that she played. It's just, wow.
Madam Vice President, what's going on with Kamala HQ?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have good news. So Kamala HQ is turning into headquarters, and it's where you can go online to get basically the latest of what's going on, and also to meet and revisit with some of our great, courageous leaders, be they elected leaders, community leaders, civic leaders, faith leaders, young leaders. I'm really excited about it. So stay engaged, and I'll see you out there. Thank you.
Imagine if this person had been our president. Oh my gosh. What? By the way, she couldn't get the @ headquarters. She couldn't get the @ headquarters handle on X. So they made it @ headquarters 67, which is the meme that is, I've been informed by my kids, is not cool anymore. So the pandering, right? The pandering that was classic Kamala is continuing. Just the whole thing is a mess. I don't know what she said, Robbie. It doesn't make any sense. It's just words. We'll see you around. Hey, hi. This is going to be a place to like hang out. I clearly, by the way, the reason I'm putting this in the top 5 though is Kamala Harris is planning on running. I mean, that's the takeaway. All right. And she has not gotten any better. So the beautiful thing, I mean, just imagine here, close your eyes and picture the most amazing thing. Kamala Harris running against J.D. Vance. I hear a choir of angels singing, and they're pretty good. They're not, they're not 6'7". All right, number 1 top news story, and boy, is the left butthurt about this. The Washington Post cut a third of its staff. People are they're just despondent. I think they eliminated their whole sports section, several foreign bureaus, books coverage. Remember I told you about AI, and this, I'll keep coming back to this topic. And when we were talking about AI a couple of days ago, one thing I mentioned is the layoffs at Amazon. And I mentioned all of these, I mean, I think it was 13,000 or so middle managers, management level people that were making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And these people were all canned in one big fell swoop in the fourth quarter of last year. And I said it was they're being automated. I mean, the decisions that they were making and the roles that they were playing, Bezos is a smart guy, and he's getting those roles filled basically with AI. And this is more of it. And the problem is, the reason why nobody feels badly for the Washington Post is they decided to be agitprop for Biden and for Harris and for all things left and really become an extension of some form of Antifa propaganda against Trump, and stop being a news organization. And then these people legitimately expected that Bezos was going to buy them and burn $100 million a year. It's all so silly and pathetic. So, look, you produce something nobody wants, you go away. Look at the New York Post. The New York Post has expanded. They have created now, this year, the California Post. The New York Post is a legitimate publication. They deliver the news. And there are plenty of examples of news forward sites that are much newer than the Post that have come on the scene and are getting traction. People are tired of the propaganda. If you want an opinion show, you tune into me. I'm giving you my opinion. I'm telling you what it is. I'm being palms up about it. But there's nothing more. There's just nothing more sad than a group of reporters who got a lot of big paychecks. And one thing AI can do right now is write pretty damn well. So if your big skill was to write, I'm sorry, you're just becoming technologically unemployed. I'm just telling you, that's what it is. By the way, let me say a word here about Salmon Ash injury law and about AI. A lot of people are actually using AI to write their letters to the insurance company. They're going, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to do this myself. And I hear about this every day. I love it. Somebody will call me here at the office and say, Sam, I actually tried using AI. I was writing all my own letters, and then they still didn't offer me anything. And I'll tell you why. Because the only thing that actually gets you what's fair in a case, even the most basic claim, is the insurance company fearing that if they don't take care of you, their rear end's going to end up in court. And ChatGPT is not, as of yet, going to go to court for you. So you can write all the most beautiful letters, and you'll spend hours upon hours and days and months even writing to the insurance company. And just at the end of it, they're like, oh, nice letters. Okay, great. Here, we'll give you half of what we owe you. See you later. All right. I got to take a break here. Bottom of the hour. I'll get to it. Don't worry. I got to play that clip from CNN that I opened the show with. This Bakari Sellers guy. They ought to revoke his law license for the advice he's giving. Sam Mirejovsky on the What's Right Media Network. Back in a moment. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Welcome, folks, to the program. Again, sam@whatsrightshow.com is my email. I am astounded every time I see a person in the media or a politician suggesting to Americans that they interject themselves in and at law enforcement. I'm astounded by it, and particularly when that person is an attorney. Here's the, I referenced at the top of the hour, here's the exchange last night. Scott Jennings talking to Bakari Sellers, who, of course, we know as a liberal left-wing commentator, but he's also an attorney. This guy went to law school. Holy heck. Listen to how this started.
Would you advise someone, even if they're very angry, even if they don't like the laws, to insert themselves into the middle of an active law enforcement situation?
If they see something wrong, absolutely.
You would advise a person or a client of yours to literally engage in the middle of an active law enforcement matter?
If they see something wrong, I would say yes. I would say definitely
That's a crime.
I would say put your.
It is a crime to interfere with law enforcement. You're advising people to commit crimes?
What I'm advising
do you
people,
consider filming with a phone a crime?
Just to be extremely clear, because I know how these things get clipped and shipped around on Twitter. What I'm actually telling you, Scott, is if my client came to me and said, Bakari, I was outside and I saw something going down and I saw somebody being abused and I went and tried to put myself in between them, or I raised the camera, do not hit officers. Do not spit on officers. But yes, by all means, if you see something wrong, videotape it.
Let me say, first of all, Bakari Sellers at least is smart enough that he caught himself, right? Because his first answer is yes. Well, Jennings, I like the obviously the proposition, the fact pattern that Scott Jennings gives him is great. Would you advise somebody, even if they're very angry, to insert themselves in the middle of an active law enforcement situation? And Bakari answers, if they see something wrong, absolutely. This is insane. Now, videotaping, yes, again, they keep moving the needle on this. You can stand somewhere and videotape. And there are examples, folks, by the way, of police, not just ICE, but all police officers telling somebody, a citizen, you can't videotape me. And that's not true. You are allowed to stand off to the side and videotape. If you're in a public place, you can videotape. I mean, that's the law. I'm sorry. But I watched the tapes that people who were, I guess, standing on the sidelines videotaping took of Alex Preddy. And Preddy wasn't videotaping. Just because he had a phone in his hand doesn't mean that he was videotaping and he was there as a First Amendment observer. He was, and by their own admission, remember when he was shot, everybody was making a hero out of him because he had come to the rescue of a woman. There was a woman that was getting detained. She was getting arrested. The officers were attempting to cuff her, and he interjected himself into that arrest. And he did it physically while carrying a gun. Now, if that's all there was to it, obviously, right? Did he put his hand on the gun? Who had control of the gun? These are all questions, and I've been very, even to the angst of some of you, I've been very circumspect in how I describe the situation. I'm explaining we just don't, still some missing facts. But they're moving the goalposts. That's my point. They're constantly moving, and watch how this continues, because I want you to all be so aware what they're trying to do. Abby Phillip Goes, well, what was he doing? And they love talking about the phone.
Scott, what was Alex Preddy doing in the moment that he was assaulted
What
by
was Keith Porter
ICE
doing?
officers?
He was engaging
What was he
with law
doing?
enforcement
He wasn't.
officers.
He
He
was
was
looking backwards. He
within
was
inches
protecting
of
our
them.
woman.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he
Law
yes, he
enforcement.
was. There was
What
a
was he?
scrum.
Hold on.
Abby.
What was he doing? What exactly was
He
he
was
doing?
engaging in the middle
Do you
of a law
remember that he
enforcement
was
situation.
recording?
That doesn't
And
absolve
do you?
you.
Hold on. No,
That
no,
doesn't
no.
absolve you of
No,
anything.
no,
Holding a camera and a phone does
Hold on
not
a second.
erase
I'm
federal
talking
laws.
frame by frame.
Huh? Frame by frame. The leftists said it themselves that they were proud that Alex Preddy came to the aid of a woman that was getting detained by ICE. The entire objective here is, if you listen to them, to disrupt ICE operations, to prevent ICE from going out and arresting people. But here, very specifically, the officers all, I think there was 4 or 5 of them that went to arrest a woman who was resisting, and Preddy got involved. Now, look, was it a clean shooting? I don't know who had the gun. We still have some unanswered questions here. But is this guy a leading candidate in 2026 for the Darwin Award? I mean, yeah. He showed up, had a gun, was armed, was belligerent. We know this, and he had a history of belligerence. There's other videos that have come out. And what does he do? He gets in and physically tries to break up an attempted arrest. You know, I love the example of the DUI checkpoint, because, I mean, just imagine this, right? You are you believe that people should be allowed to drive drunk, and you believe actually that the police are abusive because they set up DUI checkpoints. And you actually believe that they're unconstitutional because you read it somewhere on some website somewhere. And you believe that. I want you to try to show up at the scene of a DUI checkpoint and begin interfering, physically getting in the faces of officers as they're stopping people and asking them, have you had anything to drink, and checking for signs of intoxication. I try. It's not going to end well for you. Okay. And as an attorney, I can tell you, don't do it. You want to film from the side and you got some deal where you got a channel of people getting busted for DUI, whatever, like, do it. I mean, just go, fine. You film from the sidelines. And you know what? If the police ask you to move, here's another pro tip from someone who has a brain. If you want to, right, do that, fine. The police show up and say, sir, I'd like you to move back 10 feet, please. I mean, as an attorney, you probably have the right to stand where you are, but the time to argue with the officer is not then and there. You know how many I've driven hundreds of thousands of miles in my life, millions, maybe a million, a lot of I used to commute up to LA in my younger years. I've driven a lot. I've gotten pulled over a fair amount. And I'm always amazed by the anti-cop people and the police are out there murdering everybody people, because granted, I'm not African American, I'm not Latino, but I also have been pulled over by some really mean cops and some assholes. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. And I can get a little feisty, and I have problems with authority and whatnot. But in that moment, when I get pulled over, my response is all the time is yes, sir, no, sir, comply. And if they're doing something terrible to me, I will handle it later in a court of law. My entire motive in that traffic stop is for the officer to feel safe, for me to not give any cause to be arrested, okay? Because that's a minor inconvenience to the cop. But if I get arrested, I'm a busy guy. It's the rest of my day, maybe the night for me. So I run that simple, cost calculus. Does an little extra smile and yes, officer, and oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, officer, and you got it. And by the way, officer, I got my hands on the steering wheel. You want to get my ID? It's in my wallet. It's in my right pocket. Would you like my registration? It's in the glove box. Do you mind if I reach over and get it? Now, these are basic things. These are the conversations I'm having with my kids. And Bakari got himself into the mix here. He got himself in trouble. And Philip's trying to run. But the reason I keep bringing this up, because the leftists out there, from the comfort of their luxury condos, from the halls of Congress, from behind the walls of their mansions, are going to tell little people out there, their little foot soldiers, their little blue hair, pink hair, nose ring folks, they're going to keep telling them to go out there and put themselves in harm's way, hoping that they get harmed. And it makes me upset. It breaks my heart. Oh, and here Bakari Sellers argues, well, see, and this is why they want to get into the whole, well, did Alex Preddy deserve to die? Do you deserve the death penalty for using his phone?
All of those things that you said are a crime. Which one of those things that you enumerated is a death penalty crime punished by death? Well, that can require you to be gunned down in the street. Which one of those things?
Nothing requires you to be gunned down in the street, Bakari. My only point is that you have ordinary people who are being trained or instructed to go into the middle of active law enforcement zones, and that is extremely unwise. You keep saying that with zero evidence. If you insert your body and yourself into the middle of a law enforcement situation, it's dangerous.
What do you mean? Bakari Sellers just said he would instruct his client to do this. He literally said he would. These people are deeply unserious. And the problem is that they don't want to get confronted ever by their by their own ill intent. And again, I've been so consistent here about this. I'm not celebrating Renee Good's death. I'm not celebrating Alex Preddy's death. They're tragedies. And why? I view it very differently from the leftists who view these people as martyrs and heroes and whatnot. They're not heroes. They're not martyrs. They're sad individuals who got themselves, their brains turned around by these crazy leftist ideologies. They got themselves all amped up by powerful Democrats and allowed themselves to be used as cannon fodder, okay? Put out there and do stupid things that got them killed for the sake of the narrative, for the sake of what? Of a political win? The story remains the same as consistent today as it did, the day after all this happened. Sam Mirejovsky, got to take a quick break here on the What's Right Media Network. Hang tight, folks. More after this. Well, I don't know if I want to admit to this on air, Robbie. I'm just talking here with producer Robbie during the break. Folks, actually, these are the conversations we should broadcast. This would be good content. Oh, let me tell you, by the way, Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone, the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. I was probably 21. I can tell you 21 because I bought a gun when I was 21, and I occasionally go for work into some seedy parts of the Inland Empire and LA County. And I'll leave it at that. And you do stupid things when you're younger. I carried a gun. I didn't have a permit for California again. This would have been, I was 21, okay? The gun was legal and everything. I just didn't have a concealed permit for it. And keeping it in the car loaded, probably not the best idea. So Robbie here in the break, we're talking about law enforcement and how to behave around law enforcement and how all these leftists out there interjecting themselves into these arrests, and then gosh forbid the police respond and then they're carrying a gun and then they get shot and then it's a problem, right? Robbie's reminding me of how how I was we got pulled over together. And I had forgotten this incident, Robbie, but we got pulled over, and I was 21. Robbie, you were 20, right? And then I immediately rolled down my windows and turned on the dome lights. I put my hands on the steering wheel, on the dash, fingers out. Officer, how can I help you? And by the way, I was in a nice car. If I remember, I was driving a Mercedes at this point. I was in a nice car, but I didn't want any problems. And yeah, I mean, but that's, and I don't remember if that particular cop had an attitude. I know I've had a few, particularly when I was younger. When I was in my early 20s, and the kids wanted to, cops wanted to prove something with the kid. Oh yeah, I didn't even get a ticket. Oh, he thanked me. You said, okay, see, this is simple. And if you're an officer out there listening to this program, am I right? I mean, if you're walking up to a car, the race of the person doesn't matter. If you're walking up to the car, if the person's got the windows rolled down, dome lights on, I know you've got them all lit up, but they've, the hands on the steering wheel, ask permission before you reach for your wallet, keep your seatbelt on. Good evening, officer. Nice positive attitude. It goes a long way, right? And incidentally, here's another pro tip for all the leftists out there. You can actually get out of tickets this way. I'm convinced I have paid at least 6 fewer tickets than I deserved because I have been courteous. And that's not white privilege. That's just me being smart. So anyway, leaving that there, and Robbie, great remembrance. I mean, I could have gone to jail for having a weapon, but instead, I got off with a nice attaboy. Oh my goodness, Chuck Schumer. We'll get to this later. These Democrats. The other part of this, they're fighting ICE, they're fighting immigration enforcement, and they're also fighting voter ID. What does that tell you about that party? If I describe to you this party, if I said, hey, there's this political party out there in a country, I'm not going to describe to you the party, I'm not going to describe the country, but it's a democracy. They have universal enfranchisement. If you're a citizen, you can vote. And I tell you now, there's this one party that wants to open the borders and let anybody in. They also want to do anything they can to stop people from getting removed if they've entered the country illegally. This is the party that also wants to give them maximum benefits, meaning money, welfare, housing, etc. And this party also, when it comes time to having an election, says that voting doesn't require any ID or any proof of citizenship. Oh, also, this party believes that there should be universal mail-in ballots that are mailed basically to anybody that's applied to, say, for example, in some states, a driver's license. And those same states have allowed people to get driver's licenses who are not citizens. What would, and if you presented this to a little green man from outer space, what do you think his conclusion would be? There's only one takeaway, and that is that this party cheats. This party cheats. Here's a great interview about the SAVE Act here. Chuck Schumer, of course, played his clip yesterday of him back in the 90s, 1996, being very anti-illegal immigration. Boy, yes, here, listen.
There's a new Pew Research poll that 95% of Republicans, but also 71% of Democrats like this idea. So why do you not?
It's Jim Crow 2.0. And I called it Jim Crow 2.0, and the right wing went nuts all over the internet. That's because they know it's true. What they're trying to do here is the same thing that was done in the South for decades to prevent people of color from voting. For instance, if you change, you're a woman who got married and changed your last name, you won't be able to show ID and you'll be discriminated against. If you can't find a birth certificate or a proper ID, you'll be discriminated against. This is vicious and nasty. And I said to our Republican colleagues, it will not pass the Senate. You will not get a single Democratic vote in the Senate. We're not reviving Jim Crow all over the country.
David, Scott, Steve got your emails, by the way, when we talked about voter ID a couple days ago. And yeah, going to the hospital, you need ID. Go to the doctor's office, you need ID. You need ID everywhere. You need it. By the way, what is this nonsense about women getting married? And my wife got married and changed her name and never missed an election to my knowledge and recollection. And what is Chuck Schumer worried about? Leftist women these days aren't even getting married and certainly not changing their names. So maybe it's all the trans people that are changing their names. That's the real risk. Oh, Sam Mirejovsky here. Scott Bessent on the Hill today. Back for more punishment handed out, this time to senators. Don't want to miss this. One of the key differences this second Trump term compared to the first is the succession plan, the number of strong players that Trump has enabled to share the stage with him and who have become and are becoming rapidly rising stars within our party. The longevity, in other words, of the movement is ensured. And the capture of the Republican Party by Donald Trump for the foreseeable future, outlasting him even as president, is all but secured. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Folks, I think this is hugely important because the Democrats are going to have, by virtue of lacking incumbency, a wide open primary. Now, we know, we're looking prospectively now at 2028. We know that the Democrats don't necessarily believe in democracy. They won't. There's no guarantee that they're going to give their voters a choice. Of course, there's going to be the usual primary contests. They're going to run the game, but they've probably by then will have decided who's going to get the full weight of the Democratic Party, the Democratic National Committee behind them. And that's who's going to decide this. All those super delegates, remember, came along and gave Hillary what she needed to beat out Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders still there with his mittens left out in the cold. But on the Republican side, the Republican primary is merit-based. And the best example is the same year that the Democrats did their most egregious heist of democracy in their primaries, the Republicans submitted to the party, at least, to the grandees of the Republican Party, submitted to the voters and accepted the result, although not very, willingly at times, in making Trump the nominee. You think the Republican, I will tell you this, and I know this to be a fact. The powers that be in the Republican Party in 2015, 2016 were far more opposed to the idea of Donald Trump as the nominee than the same people inside the DNC were with the idea of Bernie Sanders being theirs. The level of hatred, and incidentally, people still have it within those kind of former Republican circles. These people are out of the party now. They're done. But the antipathy for Trump back in 2016 was huge, and that's why I'm setting this up because it's all very important. This is why when Trump had his implausible win, which by the way yours truly predicted going into the November 2016. Remember, Robbie, we were on air in LA, and I said, Trump's going to win this. That's my gut. He's going to win this. We'll see tomorrow, but Trump's going to win this. And sure enough, there it was. And the next morning, we were playing the Air Force One theme, and Donaldus Maximus had pulled out an incredible win. A lot of long faces at the Go Hillary rally that was scheduled for a victory party. It was scheduled for the night before. It was in this moment, though, that Trump admittedly, and he said this publicly, he said, I wasn't quite ready. I didn't have the benefit that someone like Hillary or even Obama, certainly Bush, have of having years and years of political experience and having trusted aides that are familiar with the political system to come in and bring it. And so he trusted a lot of Republicans, and he trusted the RNC, and he got saddled with a bunch of never Trumpers. And frankly, a lot of losers, a lot of people that believed that he was just a fleeting flash in the pan, that didn't understand that Trump in that election, even in 2016, came with a real mandate from the American people to govern according to the promises that he made on the campaign trail. Well, this is a critical thing. Now, we are sitting here 10 years, a decade later, because we're here in 2026. And this passage of time has been unkind to the haters. The time that has elapsed from Trump's implausible win in 2016 to his defeat, we'll call it that, in 2020, to his triumphant victory, massive win in 2024. We're still sitting here today, and there are people out there going, is Trump just a fleeting thing? And my suggestion is that it is not. Now, Trump went into the 2024 race with the benefit of having been put through the ringer by Joe Biden and his crooked cronies. And in having run that gauntlet of with two impeachments prior to that, right, when he was president, and then a lot of backstabbing, and then of course, in the I always call it the interregnum. The interregnum. This is a period is in between two rulers, but basically I've always joked that he's the king, and no kings. I guess we had no kings in between when Biden was around. We just had, ruled by a bunch of sick communists. Okay, so in the interregnum period between Trump's two terms in office, Trump was, put through hell. And in that period, he discovered who his allies were. He discovered who would be in his foxhole politically. And it was in that era that you had the good fortune. If you look at this administration, one of the reasons it's on the rails is people like Stephen Miller, okay, who are just brilliant and who are in Trump's corner and who are vetting people and who were part of the obviously early stages of the campaign, the fight against Biden, and then the campaign itself and transition and going into the presidency. Not everybody, and I understand this. There's people out there, but Sam, J.D. Vance, he said some bad things about Trump and whatnot, and then but notice where we are today. Has J.D. Vance not been a consistent, loyal, and fearless vice president? Comparing, and I know it's not fair because it's like saying somebody, able-bodied goes in and wins a race in the Special Olympics. So comparing J.D. Vance to Pence is a little bit rude to J.D. Vance, but compare it to Pence. I mean, my gosh, this was a person who was undermining Trump and literally a snake inside the White House. And we all wanted to believe he wasn't, but he absolutely was, no question about it. And so we're here in 2026, midterms. See how those turn out, setting that aside for a minute. As soon as the midterms are over, I want you to understand this. 2028 is on. And what I always want you to do is think about things before they happen. And the greatest asset here is that there are all of these superstars that are being born and in some cases reborn. I mean, take Marco, for example. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a phenomenal member of this administration. Would you not agree? And Marco Rubio was at one point an opponent of Trump's in 2016 on the stage with Jeb and just a whole collection of misfits Trump up there from the beginning, just dominating them. And you'd think, right? This is Marco Rubio, no big fan of Trump's. And they were, you know, the little Marco and the terrible, and look at him now. In politics, it can't be so absolutist. You can't be so, well, that guy wronged me this one time. I can never talk to him. In business, by the way, in business, it's a little better to operate this way. But in politics, it's tough because people are out there and have their brands and have their relevancy and have their constituency groups. And oftentimes, to be politically successful, you have to leverage those. And Trump understands this very well. So this, I think, is one of the reasons why the Democrats are so surprised when they run the numbers on the polling. And if CNN did a whole thing on it today, they're like surprised that things are going as well as they are, and that Republicans are accepting Trump, and that they're accepting J.D. Vance. Those are interesting things. It sure would save Republicans a whole lot of money and angst if there was a clear front runner. I'm not saying don't have an election. I'm all for and believe very strongly in democracy within our own party and picking the right nominee that we Republicans want and being tested in a primary setting. But it's the Democrats are going to have a giant internecine battle. They're going to spend, meaning intra-party battle, in between, amongst themselves. The outcome of it may very well be predetermined because a pretty boy, Gavin Newsom, head apparatchik from California, he may be actually the one that is already predetermined, pre-selected, pre-anointed to be the nominee. But they're still going to have to play the whole kabuki theater and get out there. They got maybe Kamala Harris. They can't just sideline a woman of color, right? That could be problematic. These are interesting thoughts, right? But you got to listen. Wait, I got to play to you for what they had on CNN this morning, because the data backs up what I'm saying, and the Democrats out there are sort of bewildered by it. Okay, hang tight. We'll get to it. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, Sam Mirejovsky here. Let me say something about Sam and Ash injury law. You get hurt, okay? You may be an accident, something straightforward. You think you're just going to go to the insurance company, palms up. You know, tell them what happened. You're going to explain yourself. You're going to send them all the documentation. It's going to take a couple days, and everything's going to be taken care of. And all of a sudden, days turn to weeks. Weeks sometimes even turn into months. And you've put a lot of work into this, a lot of time. It's been a distraction to you at work. It's a distraction to you at night when you're home with the kids. And it's frustrating. And at the end of the day, all of a sudden you find out you're $1,500, $2,000, maybe even $3,000 upside down, out of pocket for something that you didn't cause, something that wasn't your fault. This is wrong. It's not right. Don't go at it alone. All right. Turn it over to the pros. Quick phone call Sam and Ash and get help on your case today. Turn it over to Sam and Ash. It's that easy. 800-304-2000. The phone call's free. No money up front, no money out of pocket at any point. It's a no recovery, no fee arrangement. So Sam and Ash gets paid at the end of the case only when they've been successful on your behalf. And it still guarantees that you're ahead of what the insurance company's offering you now. So it's real easy. 800-304-2000. 1-800-304-2000. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Now, here was, folks, Harry Enton on CNN this morning. This was an interesting takedown. First, on the MAGA movement. Remember when we were told that making America great again was a flash in the pan? It was just a Donald Trump thing. And without Donald Trump, would it really last? Or would the Republican Party just go back to business as usual? This was a big thought all of Trump's first term. And there were many Republicans and certainly every Democrat highly invested in seeing to it that the era of Trump was a fluke. Listen what the data says.
GOP who view MAGA favorably. 2 years ago when Donald Trump was running for term number 2, it was 74%. Today, look at this. It's 78% of Republicans who view the Make America Great Again movement favorably. So we're talking about something that, in my opinion, will very much be able to outlast Donald Trump. Trump is in term number 2. He can't run for a term number 3. But the bottom line is this. What he brought into the GOP looks like it's going to last long beyond him.
Wow. So that's a surprise. Now, by the way, the whole segment here, I was watching this happen and I was curious about it because I don't think they're very happy about it. I don't think they're happy at all. And they're thinking actively, right, about what this means for Democrats' chances. Well, yeah. Okay, like for example, let's look at J.D. Vance. Let's look at his approval numbers within the Republican Party.
Obviously, J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, at this point looks like a favorite for the Republican nomination come 2028. And one of the reasons why he looks like a favorite is because the Republican base loves J.D. Vance. What are we talking about here? Someone who really represents the Make America Great Again movement. This is somebody a year ago, his favorable rating among Republicans, 81%. Latest Marquette University Law School poll, look at this. 84%. 84%. So if anything, his favorable rating is somewhat up from where it was a year ago after a year of Trump. And, of course, that matches what we see when it comes to MAGA, right? It matches what we see coming to MAGA, whereby it was 74 and now it's 78%. If anything, MAGA's grip on the GOP, and it seems like the next in line to be the next standard bearer of MAGA, both of them, their favorable ratings are actually up after a year of Donald Trump's second term.
You know, I'm convinced it's actually one of the reasons for this is that Trump is far more collaborative in this term, and that's because he feels that he can trust people. I had this observation with Trump in the first term, and I shared it with you here. I don't remember exactly when, and so Robbie, looking for this clip may be a bit of a needle in the haystack, but I remember saying that Trump is out there fighting all these battles on Twitter and fighting all these battles from the White House, press briefing room and with the reporters, because he doesn't feel that anybody really behind him, whether in the cabinet or even in his kind of general, White House, West Wing office, has his back enough. And is effective actually at fighting for his priorities. And I'm going to say this. One thing here. So that by the way, that got him overexposed, and people would say, "Why are we constantly hearing about Trump fighting?" He'd say, "Don't fight with him." And I'd go home. I'd listen to my wife tell me, "See, Trump, this shouldn't just somebody else should be doing this." I'm like, who? And this is why watching Scott Bessent yesterday and now today in the Senate is such an amazing thing, because Bessent is out there just like Marco Rubio is, just like J.D. Vance is, just like we have certainly Howard Lutnick, and everybody that's out there in front and center, Dr. Oz, Kennedy, they're all out there and they're on message, and they are fighting back, clapping back on people and for the media, and getting across, by the way, the administration's policies, and frustrating the opposition. And Trump can sit back and now it becomes now it's, of course, it's coming across as more collaborative, but the reason for it is that the team is the best it's ever been. That's my takeaway, and I'm going to get to the Bessent stuff here in a second, because again, it was today on the Hill. Yesterday was the House, today's the Senate. And these we're talking, this is all the usual idiots. I mean, I won't bother you all of it, but it's a couple great moments I'm gonna share. But it's the same when Marco Rubio gets on the Hill, and Marco Rubio just calmly and confidently doesn't give the Democrats an inch. And they don't know what to do with this. There's no gotcha. In fact, if anything, Marco Rubio, when he's up there, makes them look stupid. And that's what Bessent is doing. Now, fundamentally, he's making these people look stupid. He's making them look small. He's sitting down below at a table as a witness, and all these guys and gals senators are sitting up on the dais in the hearing room, and it's meant to intimidate him, and they're the ones that end up looking like mental midgets. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Hang tight, folks. More of the What's Right show after the break. Well, it started yesterday on the Hill. I mean, Bessent was up there in the House, absolutely making making fools of these people. Well, most of these congressmen and women are not serious, folks. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome back. Chris Van Hollen. Remember Chris Van Hollen? Chris Van Hollen, he is a peach. This is the guy who had margaritas with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Flew down there to visit with him in El Salvador. The champion, not for ordinary folks in his state of Maryland, but for illegal immigrants. Like this guy, like Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who, by the way, had a sketchy history and may or may not have been involved in some serious gang activity. Anyway, Chris Van Hollen tried to get Scott Bessent to admit that in the past he thought that tariffs were a bad idea. He tried to get him to admit it. So here's the exchange, and Bessent's comeback is just absolutely precious.
You used to believe that tariffs would increase inflation and prices. Isn't that true?
I wrote that in a letter to my investors, but a year before, I also wrote that I thought Senator Warren would be the Democratic presidential nominee.
Okay. But
so my
please.
predictions have been bad.
Please.
Have been bad.
Okay.
Yeah, I also wrote that same. I wrote that I thought Senator Warren would be the Democrat. So I guess I've been wrong about things. And poor Elizabeth Warren tried to hit back on Bessent after that little delight, and it fell flat as well.
Senator, it may be a bit nuanced for you, but what President Trump is referring to is the media saying that the affordability crisis was generated by this administration when it was you and President Biden who destroyed the buying power of the American people. So there is an affordability crisis, and you were front and center in it.
So let me make sure that I understand. Donald Trump is not saying that affordability, what's happening to families right now, is a hoax?
He is saying that trying to lay the blame at this administration rather than the Biden-Warren economy is a hoax.
Okay, so...
And that sort of ended it, which is absolutely true, right? We know that housing's not affordable like it ought to be. And we also understand that when you import 25 million people, give the money to go and rent homes, give them cash in their pocket, that everywhere they're going to go, they're going to start renting places. They're going to, because of course these folks are okay stacking themselves into one home, 3 families deep, will go and outbid, out purchase power Americans. We also understand, of course, that runaway inflation, because we shut the country down and then parachute dropped in a bunch of cash, produced really unprecedented in my lifetime runaway inflation. So everybody gets that. Blaming housing and unaffordability here on this administration that's a year in is kind of much of nothing. Now, one thing I'll tell you is there's new economic data out there. We are, what is it, 5.5%, 5.6%? I mean, the growth, the dynamic growth of this that's been achieved, people are speechless by it. It's real. There is growth. Now, I'm telling you, there's a lot of forces out there that are going to be problematic, and I've spoken about the AI component of it, and I can tell you that Trump is bringing in a lot of very smart people in that field. You'll notice that's one of the things Sachs is working on, but he's always, he's got Palantir and all these, Alex Karp and some smart people, and Trump understands we got to get ahead of it. But the fact is, they keep harping on these tariffs. They keep harping on these tariffs, and I think if we're looking at an economy that call it development, white collar sort of thinking jobs are going to be replaced by AI, Trump repatriating manufacturing back into the country might be one of the smartest aspects of his long-term economic vision for the country. What I mean by this, just imagine this for a second. What was the very basis for globalism? Like, what was the selling point? What would Bill Clinton, his advisors tell people about shipping jobs overseas? They would say, well, we're getting the dirty stuff out of the country, right? And America will be the place where we come up with the IP. Everybody here is going to have the good paying jobs, and we're gonna get rid of the kind of lower paying stuff. We're gonna get rid of that out of the country, and really America's standard of living is going to go up. But what happens when coming up with the product can be done in a day by one person, operating an AI system? What happens when something that used to take 6, 7, maybe 10 years and employ a team of 4,000 individuals now can be done by computer? And the gutting of the industrial capacity of our country by the globalists. And you could throw the Bush people in there too, but the Clinton globalists are the post George W. Bush era in our country, where we really set our minds to this. Never foresaw, and you almost can't blame them, but it never foresaw a universe where those high-paying thinking jobs would disappear. It was science fiction, right? And we heard about AI, and it was still very far away. Oh, Trump's a few steps ahead of people, and dismissing this policy is, and this is why these Democrats bother me so much. It's like, oh, tariffs. By the way, the economy's roaring. Okay, it's doing well. Objectively, the indicators are all good. But still, we have very high interest rates. People are getting punished on their debt. Those people who have variable rates, certainly for credit cards, right? Unprecedented, very high numbers. It's killing a lot of folks. And then we've got these unknowns, and we've got these wild fluctuations in the market as we're trying to figure out what this new technology can and can't do. The next 2 years, I'll say it again, very critical, and are going to see enormous changes. You can't even conceive of these changes, and they're going to play into 2028. Job security, income security, future security is going to be the dominant issue in the 2028 election. Who do you think has the leg up when that happens? Trump is perceived. Again, I don't understand Trump's not running, but Trump is the guy, right? And Trump, whoever he anoints, is probably going to be the nominee in the Republican Party. Now, the perception, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but the perception that I think is out there is that at least the people that are running this administration are in tune with the folks that understand the tech. But there's also the perception, the competing perception is that when people start to see their jobs disappear, and this is why the Washington Post story is such an important story, because Jeff Bezos is the bad guy. He's the bad guy for cutting those jobs. This is why I put it as the number one thing happening right now. He's a bad guy. He's cutting jobs. He's screwing a little hardworking journalists. We're all communists, okay, and agitators and basically propagandists. He's cutting their jobs. And nobody's, stopping to consider that they weren't providing anything of value and that they became obsolete. And that the company that they were working for, the product that they were making, nobody wanted. That's already a more nuanced argument. So the fear, of course, of 2028 is if you have a lot of people that are either unemployed, on the cusp of unemployment, fear future unemployment in the coming years, they're going to vote out of tremendous fear. And if the Democrats do what they do best, which is promise everybody income security and giving away and fantasy land, right? The warmth, of collectivism, to borrow a phrase from Comrade Mamdani, the Democrats can use that issue and get a leg up. Now, Trump's going to have to, Republicans writ large are going to have to get ahead of this. But the biggest selling point actually is bringing manufacturing back. Every day I open my computer and I start looking at X, I see news stories of companies, of manufacturing companies abroad moving to the U.S., declaring, yes, we just bought a factory, or we're moving our factory, building a factory, and come 2 years from now, those factories will be up and rolling, and that's about the time it takes to get everything done. It's not insignificant, folks. It's not nothing. And all of a sudden, we will be making things. And making things, there still will be a need for tangible products. Computers won't be able to make all of that, right? But the thinking behind them will be automated, largely. By the way, speaking of AI, there's a huge controversy brewing right now with Scott Adams and using his likeness in perpetuity. I got to share this with you when we come back. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Back in a moment. Well, this Scott Adams AI controversy has me thinking too, and so I'm going to just share with you what's going on here. Somebody created an AI coffee with AI Scott Adams account. They've basically taken the hours and hours and hours of footage of Scott Adams doing his famous online show and programmed an AI, imitation version of Scott Adams, a posthumous version. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. I don't know. I think it's eerie is what I think. I think it's weird. But it's going to happen. It's going to be possible, for example, to take, particularly where there is a lot of footage and a lot of dialogue recorded of a particular person and create a digital version of them, whether they're alive or dead. And you can imagine, for example, you could be in a college class someday in the future. This is what I envision. And be able to attend an economics course taught by, Milton Friedman. I'm going to give you an example, right? Because there's a lot of recorded video of Milton Friedman, and a lot of written material, books and everything. You load that all into a system and you begin coding and building a model of, and you could, absolutely have courses, new courses that are analyzing new information and new circumstances. As if it were a living embodiment of the deceased economist. So this is going to happen. But there's an ethical concern behind it. Let me play here, if I may, just a snippet here of what was posted online a couple days ago, and I had it loaded here. I just didn't get to it right away with everything else going on. So it's a normal beginning of the show, but this is all AI.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a brief pause inside modern civilization. Today we run a show for you right now. It's good enough that I calmly risk my existence on this, because in a literal way, my survival depends on you continuing to watch me here.
It's eerie. I mean, it looks like him. If you saw this clip, you would think to yourself, I don't know. I'm watching an old clip of Scott. But it turns out that at some point in the past, and this specific clip that I'm going to play is from July of 2021, Scott Adams actually gave his permission to be turned into AI. And here's what he said.
I would like to be a model for one of the first AIs. I would offer myself as someone whose public, thoughts and words are so pervasive on the internet, and also the video and audio of me, that I would be a good candidate to turn into AI, even if you're just practicing. So I would like to give permission that any AI that's built based on me has my permission to extend my personality. So if my AI wants to say things that I never said, but seems to be compatible with what I might have said, I'm okay with that. We all evolve, right? Once I become a digital entity, why can't I keep evolving? So I'd like to give permission today that if somebody wants to make an AI based on me, just scoop up all the information about me on the internet. And if you wanted to say new things after I'm deceased, you have my explicit permission.
Now that's binding. I have to say, as a lawyer, like, you put that out there. I mean, that is a good argument for the people who went out and did this AI program. Now, a problem is that Scott Adams seems to have withdrawn that approximately a year before his death in January of 2025, where he said the following.
A little update from me. I've been telling you for years, really, that I plan to build an AI robotic clone of myself so that I could live forever. I have changed that plan. And here's why. I thought it was just the greatest idea in the world that after I passed away, there'd be like a version of me that could grow and, change with technology and be upgraded and stuff. I thought that was great. Do you know what happens when you mention that to people you know? They look at you with sadness and they go, it wouldn't be you, right? And that's the part that was invisible to me, because in my planning, I'm not really there anymore. So I don't have to deal with the fact that people would find it uncomfortable because it's not me, but it's acting like me. And I can imagine that would hit that creepy zone, and you'd be like, why did you even do this? Like, why did you do this? It's not you. So here's how I decided to fix that. I'm not going to create a digital clone of myself. I'm going to create a digital son. I'm going to reproduce. Because my son, in AI digital robotic form, is not supposed to be just like me. It's supposed to be influenced by me, maybe have a lot of my characteristics in it, but then it's supposed to find its own way.
Well, I think it would be very odd to have yourself turned into something that isn't you, where you wouldn't. I mean, he's right. Imagine interacting with a deceased relative or a friend, someone you know intimately, and have them not actually know you, because that consciousness of being. Now, people that are in the tech world claim that it is possible that the consciousness of being, and that it could be actually transferred and downloaded from the brain eventually into another entity. That's far away, and it's still far-fetched, and I don't think it's anywhere near on the horizon. But we're going to have Neuralink implants. We're going to have, that's going to be a thing where your recall is going to be digital, and that's already being tested, folks. That's being tested. And the immediate application is to allow, you to function as a paraplegic or a quadriplegic, and but to immediately download information from the internet, to use AI intelligence to gather information, and perhaps to upload your inner thoughts. It's not an inconceivable thing. It's not complete science fiction the way it would have been certainly just 10 years ago. So we live, unfortunately, in interesting times. I give this to you just for thought, something to be aware of. All right, I got to run. We got another show tomorrow, Friday. I'll be here with bells on. All right, folks, promise to get into more. We'll see you then. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right